Hey, I'm Olivia,
I'm Regan.
and you're listening to Soarin Around WDW. All right, so we are back this week with the second half of our Parks of the Past for Hollywood Studios episode. We had a lot to talk about last week between all of the Disney news, and Hollywood Studios just has seen a lot of changes. So we wanted to give y'all the second half of the episode so we could give this park the time that it deserves with everything. So real quick, just the only real tidbit of news that's changed since we recorded the last one so far is that D23 changed its location for the streaming from the typical Contemporary to Coronado Springs, which is interesting. I don't know why they did this change. I don't know if the last time they did D23 from Orlando, like the streaming, if Coronado Springs, the tower was open yet. How new is that tower?
I have no idea, actually. That's a good point. That might be why they're moving it over there. It also, well, I don't know, like what the specifications are that allow you to be at this live stream. Like,
Yeah.
because if you have to be staying at the tower, I was thinking it might be cheaper than the Contemporary, but I don't know because it's the tower, not the actual Coronado Springs.
Right.
So I think it was open though, because
Yeah, that wasn't that long ago.
yeah, D23 wasn't that long ago, and I also that I stayed there, didn't I? Sometime.
Yeah, you stayed there in August, right? Like
Yeah,
right
and I
around.
thought I thought the tower was the only thing that existed, so it must have been there for a while
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
for
I
me to
know
think that.
it's used a lot now, the tower part for conferences, because I've had a few friends from here go there for conferences and stay in the tower. So I think it might be like a space thing. I don't
Yeah, it's just
know.
better for space, probably. Yeah, that's probably what it is.
Yeah, but that was really the only news that we've seen. We're recording this a little early because of Thanksgiving holiday and everything. So I'm sure things will happen as soon as we're done recording, as they always do. But
Yeah.
that was it. And so now to hop back into Hollywood Studios, we left off talking about the Great Movie Ride. And so now we're going to hop into another ride or attraction of the past. And this one is actually technically a show. But it was called Here Comes the Muppets, or Here Come the Muppets. And it was only there for a very short period of time, 1990 to 1991, but was quickly replaced with its secondary show. But this one was actually in the Voyage of the Little Mermaid theater,
Oh,
so
okay.
right there near Animation Courtyard. And then there was these puppets that they used for this. So this was more of like a puppeteering show than like a character live show with people dressed up like in the full suits. And there were these characters that they called the Electric Mayhem Muppets. And they actually, now those Muppet puppets were in storage for like over 10 years. And then they got put in the Muppet Vision 3D store when you're exiting the ride. That's only open like seasonally or whatever back there. That
Yeah.
has the original,
That's
like from
open
Here
never,
Come the
it feels
Muppets.
like.
Yeah, it's really like never open, which is so sad. But yeah, those original puppets were on display in that company store near the exit
I
of Muppet Vision 3D.
That's interesting that you say that. I know that a lot of people are saying that because they had said that they're sticking with the name Rock and Roller Coaster when they retheme it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are thinking that they just did that for now, just so that people like to avoid confusion about there being like a new roller coaster,
Okay.
and that they'll probably change the name. And so a lot of people are saying something
Oh,
to do with
Electric Mayhem.
Electric Mayhem would be.
Oh.
Is that like is it a band? You said.
It was like one of the cast of puppets, like as part of the show. I don't know exactly because I didn't get a chance to watch like a YouTube video of the show, but I mean, that would kind of make sense. Like, I think they
Yeah.
sang songs and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, interesting. Okay, that would be kind of cool. And then 2 weeks after the show closed, they brought a second live Muppet show, so Muppets weren't gone out of the parks for long. And this one was called Muppets on Location Days of Swine and Roses. And that opened in a different location in the park. It was kind of more where Muppet Vision 3D is now, like behind it, kind of near where Mama Melrose is currently. And it was just like this outdoor stage. I don't know if there was actual seating or if people just stood to watch it. But the plot kind of revolved around the Muppets. They were filming a movie and the characters like interacted with the audience. So this was actual like characters, not puppets. So like, you know how in Muppet Vision 3D, they have the people that come and walk around with the flashlights like in the audience. It was like that. Like they were dressed up as them, not just the puppets. So that was only there until 1994. So it did not stay that long either. So yeah, Muppets really, like when Muppet Vision 3D opened, that was it for a while until Pizza Rizzo changed from Pizza Planet. So I'm surprised they just like, as much as people are so obsessed with the Muppets, it seems, and maybe that's just like more relevant because of the news coming out about it, but there's just not that much of it. And I don't know if people just weren't watching the show or like what was going on, but yeah, that was kind of the history of Muppets besides Muppet Vision 3D in Hollywood Studios.
I just feel like people get really, really antsy whenever they change anything, and then there's just a group of people that just wants to be mad.
Yeah, true. Which I feel like I stay in both camps. Like sometimes I'm like, no, we need to change, and sometimes I'm like, don't get rid of this classic attraction.
Yeah, like, I mean, but I feel like, I don't know, it just becomes like like the cool thing to do, to just be like really in an uproar about stuff to Disney.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a personal opinion. Anyway.
Yeah.
Continue.
So then shortly after Muppets finished, there was a show that wasn't quite in the same location, but it was called Ace Ventura Pet Detective. And it was used to promote the movie Ace Ventura When Nature Calls. And no, that was not a Disney movie, but it was owned by Warner Brothers. But Disney was given the ability to use this show at the time, and basically Warner Brothers got free promotion out of it by Disney kind of hosting it, which is so weird. Have you seen Ace Ventura?
If I have, it's been a really long time.
Okay, yeah, same. I watched them probably like early 2000s because I wasn't quite old enough to watch them in the 90s, and it's like Jim Carrey. They're funny. Definitely not a Disney vibe. So I thought that was interesting that was there. But basically, when I was watching YouTube clips of this, it was this guy acting like all zany like Jim Carrey and climbing on like the New York street and like the like, you know, the fire escape stairs. Like he was basically using those as like his show and like climbing all over them, doing all these tricks, making all these like very silly jokes. And then at the end there was like an opportunity to take pictures with him, but it like obviously wasn't Jim Carrey. It was some guy dressed up as Ace Ventura. But it just had like really bad reviews and people were just like, what is this? Why is this at Disney? So that only lasted until shortly after the movie came out, and then they kind of nixed that. And then there was another show that was extremely short-lived. This was called Hollywood's Pretty Woman. And there's a little bit of a debate about when this came out, but it looks like, according to a couple of different websites, September 1991 until November 1991. So 2 months. It was not very long at all. One of the shortest lived non-seasonal attractions in Disney Parks history. And according to one description that I found, the show...
What even comes close to that?
I know, I'm curious. I saw that, I was like, well, what would be shorter than 2 months? But there must have been something that they consider like less that wasn't seasonal. I don't know. But basically, one description of the show just said, like, the show features Roger Rabbit as a world-famous producer from Maroon Studios visiting Club Hollywood. A proprietor of the show, Mickey, Minnie, and Goofy, or the proprietors, are trying to impress Roger with their salute to the women of Hollywood, and the tributes that they are trying to, like, I guess, represent are Jeanette MacDonald, Judy Garland, Ginger Rogers, Cameron Miranda, and Madonna. And the show builds to this big surprise ending, which is Kermit and Miss Piggy walking around. That's the big surprise ending. And this was at the Beauty and the Beast stage. But people were like, Pretty Woman is like a very racy movie. Like, this is, again, does not fit the Disney vibe. And people also, like, because they were like singing songs like Judy Garland songs and stuff like that, I guess, or like acting like them, but people weren't really getting that that's what it was supposed to be, because it was like Minnie Mouse acting like that or like Miss Piggy acting like that, and people were like, what is happening? So this show did not last very long at all. And so that got nixed pretty fast. Another pretty short show that was really more like a parade that then stopped and they did a little show in front of the Great Movie Ride was called Dinosaurs Live. Do you remember the show Dinosaurs, or did you ever see it? Like, it was definitely before our time, but I've seen episodes like as I was really little, and then I watched again like a little bit as I was older. Have you? It's like I think it was another Jim Henson project.
No,
but
only thing that came to mind was the dinosaur movie.
Okay, no. If you look up the show Dinosaurs, they like look significantly different. But yeah, that didn't last very long either. And then another favorite that we have talked about a lot is Hunchback. But before Hunchback, there was a show at that same Backlot Theater, is what they called it, like back towards the New York street and like past Muppets, and it was called The Spirit of Pocahontas. And this was another very short-lived show from June 1995 through February 1996. So it didn't even make it a year, which really surprises me, before they decided to change it to Hunchback. And it was, very similar. I don't know if you ever saw either at Animal Kingdom, the Pocahontas show that they had. It was similar to that, but Animal Kingdom wasn't open yet. So that's why I'm surprised they got rid of it so soon and then switched it to Hunchback. Obviously, the Hunchback show, if y'all never got the chance to see it, it was so good. This is another one that we frequented. Every time we were at Hollywood Studios, we would see Doug Live while it was there, and we would see Hunchback while it was there, as along with Beauty and the Beast and Indiana Jones. We were very into watching the shows as young kids. And so Hunchback started off with, them describing, or what's his name? Oh my gosh, I can't even think of his name right now. The guy, Hunchback. Oh no, I know this is really gonna bother me if I can't remember what his name is. But anyways, it went very briefly through the movie. Oh, Clopin. It started off with him, singing the song about the bells of Notre Dame, and it had, live singing. It had some little stunts. And this theater was like a covered theater, metal bleachers, and then the stage. And Disneyland had an almost identical castle stage show, simply named the Hunchback of Notre Dame Festival of Fools. This one was called the Hunchback of Notre Dame: A Musical Adventure, and it was there from 1996 to 2002. So also shorter than I thought. I thought it was there like a lot longer than that. But
no, that sounds about right to me.
Really?
That's like kind of what I remember. Yeah.
And then after that was gone, they pretty much just scrapped that theater. There were rumors back in the day of Aladdin coming there, like an Aladdin stage show, and we got all excited for it. Yeah, and they basically took it down and then replaced it with another like fake street looking thing. If you walked down that street instead of the stage, it would look like you were walking down the street of, I think, like San Francisco or something. And it was very disappointing. Like they just, I don't know. There was a lot more that could have been done with that area. But do you remember when we saw the Hunchback and we had to get up on the stage because of the storm? Do you have any memories of this?
Yeah, kind of. At least I have memories of home videos of it, maybe.
Yeah, we basically were on these metal bleachers watching this show, and like typical Florida afternoon downpour comes. It's pouring down rain and it starts lightning really bad, like to the point where they were concerned because we're sitting on these metal bleachers and now the ground is like totally saturated in water. And so they yelled for everybody to they stopped in the middle of the show and they yelled for everyone to get on the stage. And so we all got to go on the stage and walk around the stage. It was really cool. I think I was I don't know, 7 when that happened, 8. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I was obsessed with theater. I was obsessed with Disney shows, and getting to walk around. And the cast members kind of ended up coming out and talking to us. I think Dad could probably speak to that more. But yeah, so that's a very vivid memory of that stage that we have. And then the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie set adventure. This was another very popular and stayed way longer than I think it It maybe not that it should have, but I loved this. I wish that they still had a playground like this because my kids would love it. But I'm surprised like they never really updated it per se, so it kind of stayed the same from when it opened in 1990, so a year after the park opened, and stayed until 2016, which is hard to picture in my head, like thinking about then like Toy Story Land and like obviously Galaxy's Edge. That's kind of what took over where this was, and it was back on like the streets of America, New York Street area, but it had different scenes from the film. It also included areas that were unique to this attraction, I guess, which were like large rideable ants. They had these different ant hills you could climb through, a spider web maze with climbing ropes, very similar to like the Boneyard Playground in Animal Kingdom if you've taken your kids there. And then it also had this 52-foot leaking water hose that sprayed water. There was a giant dog that sprayed mist. So like there were water elements, which I don't remember the water part very well. And then there was also a slide that looked like a big canister of Kodak film. There were huge 40-foot bumblebees and then these like plant root mazes. But we spent a decent amount of time like at this playground. It also was convenient because right next to it there was a place, like I don't remember, it was some like backlot themed place because this was back near the Backlot Tour, but that had food. So we like our parents would order food and the other parent would be with us like on the playground or like watching us on the playground. But I do remember it being super fun.
Yeah, no, I mean we had a lot of good times there. I definitely don't remember the water elements.
Me either. Maybe they got rid of that eventually.
Like, if it stuck around that long, that's super interesting because it would have been like the only thing back there.
Yeah, like I think that when Backlot Tour closed and they were getting ready to do Toy Story Land and Galaxy's Edge, or I guess Toy Story Land initially, that was literally the only thing back there was the food place and the playground, and that was all. And so for a long time, but 2016 just seems super late.
It just makes you think like would a lot of people like did it just not get any like foot traffic because there was no reason to be back there, or like
right.
Like if they made something of a similar caliber now in like Toy Story Land, I feel like it would be really popular.
Yeah, I agree. I know. I think they need some kind of playground. And when they opened, like, I mean, the most genius idea was the Dumbo playground at Magic Kingdom, because you can get in line, you get this pager, your kids can run around and play in the air conditioning. If they did something like that for Slinky Dog or even Toy Story Mania, like, come check in here, get your pager, or even like virtual queue or something, and then you have the kids go run around and play, and then you get called when it's your time to ride. That is like genius and gives the kids like an outlet to just go play.
But people hate virtual queues though.
Well, but do people hate the Dumbo system? Because I think that's like a pretty good one.
I don't think it's like it's such a niche thing.
Yeah.
Because like it's like a ride you're usually only doing like with your kids. Like Toy Story Mania is like a ride just for the sake of being a ride. Same with Slinky. True. So it'd be like having that for like Alien Swirling Saucers.
Yeah, which also isn't. Well, but there's a height requirement on Alien Swirling Saucers, which
That's true. It's a little bit more intense.
Whips you around a lot. But yeah, a playground would be a cool idea for something for Toy Story or somewhere in the park that they could theme. Because it's nice to have those little areas, especially if they're like covered or air conditioned, to be able to take a break. And if they're next to food, that's like even better, or like next to an area where you can sit and eat and you can still see your kids while they're running around the playground. That's like, I mean, prime. So then moving on to another section of the park that we have talked a little bit about, but next to Animation Courtyard, next to the Journey of the Little Mermaid and One Man's Dream, it was, there's a soundstage called Soundstage 4. And this is where they had the different like walk-through movie attraction set things. So the first one was the Making of the Haunted Mansion. It was there to promote the movie from 2003 until 2004. And once you entered the building, you had like usually a place where you saw a bunch of pictures from the movie. And then you got to see like this 15-minute featurette with clips from the movie. So definitely longer than a trailer, got you a little inside sneak peek of the movie that hadn't come out yet. And then after the movie, you could walk around in the interior of the building. They had sets from the movie, props from the movie, and photography was usually not allowed. Do you remember going through this? Because I definitely have like one specific memory, but we went in it a couple of times.
I kind of remember it existing. Yeah, I mean, like, is this where they ended up putting like the Captain Jack Sparrow show?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, I can like picture the building.
Yeah. Yeah, it as Haunted Mansion. So our dad, his favorite, if you listen to our episode with our dad, which if you haven't, that's everyone's favorite, so go listen to it. But his favorite ride was Haunted Mansion. So when the Haunted Mansion movie initially came out with Eddie Murphy, he was so excited, and it came out around the same time as Pirates, and Pirates was incredible. Haunted Mansion was okay. I still really like the Eddie Murphy version of Haunted Mansion. I watch it every year at Halloween. It's silly. It's definitely not quite as spooky eerie as the more updated one. But it has a lot of themes of the ride. And I remember going to see it in the movie theater with our dad. And so before we saw it, we went through this. And then I think after we saw it, it was open a few months after the movie came out. We went back to Hollywood Studios and walked through this. And that was even cooler. I am all about some behind the scenes movie stuff, movie sets, anything like that. Soundstage tours, that's like my jam. So this was so cool. And I remember we were kind of hanging towards the back and walking through the set. And we were the last people to kind of leave before they did the next, like release the next showing of the 15-minute movie. So you basically had like 15 minutes while those people were in the movie to like go through and get out before they came in. And we were kind of like, you know, in the back, the last people to leave, and this cast member was like, do you want to take a picture? Or maybe dad asked, and we were like, oh, I thought we weren't supposed to. And he let us take a picture like on the set, and it's basically the set of the grand ballroom where like the big table was at the end, and it opens up to like hell in the movie if you haven't seen it. But like the big fireplace and the big table where they all sit at. And he let us take a picture there, and I'm pretty sure, I'd have to check with dad again, but the picture either totally didn't turn out because it was so dark in there, or like I haven't seen that picture, I don't think ever, but dad was so excited to get to take a picture on the set. And I'm pretty sure the picture like didn't turn out at all. And like this cast member totally let us like break the rules and take a picture. But the movie had already come out at that point. So like it was kind of not a surprise anymore. But it was really cool. So that was one of my favorite memories. And then it turned into Journey into Narnia. So when The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movie came out, it was there from 2005 to 2008. So a long time. And then Prince Caspian, they had another like 2008 to 2011. And that was very similar. So you walked through, saw pictures, saw a, featurette of the movie, and then walked through some of the set and like costume stuff from those movies.
I definitely remember that.
Yeah. And when you walked in, they made it seem like you were walking into the wardrobe. Like it was really cool the way they had the doors. Yeah. They did a really good job with these, and it was obviously to promote the movie. They were making money off of it, but it was cool. And then after that is when it turned into The Legend of Jack Sparrow. I think they saw that Pirates' popularity like totally took off. And so they went ahead and made it into Jack Sparrow, which was super cool. But some of the props that were in the Jack Sparrow version of the attraction, which obviously this was way after the first movie came out, but they had like Elizabeth Swann's initial corset, the Pirates Ye Be Warned sign, a bunch of other stuff. They had like, I guess, a little gag about the pirate who died by the cannonball. So just different little quirky stuff that was fun and unique to Pirates that they had put in there for a few years. And then eventually all of this was demolished to make more room for Toy Story Land, I believe. Like now I'm trying to picture in my head, because this was literally right next to One Man's Dream.
To the right or left?
The left. To the right is Little Mermaid.
So the left now is bathrooms.
Okay.
And then like also part of, I think, uh, Mania. I think Mania is like the building is there as well. So it's probably a bit of each.
Okay, it's kind of hard for me to like visualize in my head. I need to look at a map, which I found a lot of old maps and was trying to like compare things, and it was making me a little dizzy. But yeah, so like whole soundstage area is gone and changed for Toy Story Land. And then there was another show that was pretty short lived, just 1 year, called the Monsters Sound Show. And this was where you can meet Olaf now, but it was called Sounds Dangerous before with after Monster Sound Show. It got changed to Sounds Dangerous with Drew Carey. Do you remember this? I remember the sign for it. I don't know that we ever did it as kids. Maybe.
Yeah, I definitely remember the sign for it.
Okay. And it was there a long time. So the Monster Sound Show was only a year, and it was an opening day like show. It explored how sound effects were created for films and television. 4 guests from the audience got to participate and create sounds for this horror comedy short, which featured Martin Short and Chevy Chase. And in the film, Martin Short plays this role of this butler who's a bad guy. And he is sending this insurance agent, who's Chevy Chase, to his doom. So I'm sure it was like a little too dark for Hollywood Studios. But then we go to, or it was renamed to ABC's Sound Studio in 1997, and then was replaced by Sounds Dangerous in 1999, and lasted until 2012, which is a long time.
That's why I remember seeing the sign then.
Yeah. There was a big sign like kind of on top of the building of Drew Carey, and this was like a theater style seating. Guests are told that the show is this ABC test pilot called Undercover Live, and you actually wear headphones and you're in the dark for the majority of the show. But then they also have some projections that are in front of the guests, and Drew Carey plays this undercover detective named Foster. Eventually, this was scrapped because they used it for Star Wars Path of the Jedi for a while, which was another like montage of things from Star Wars, and it was like still a theater style seating place, and that was from 2015 through 2019, and showed like a bunch of memorable moments from Star Wars movies. Did you ever go in that when it was Path of the Jedi?
No.
Yeah, I don't think we ever did either. I do remember seeing it change or whatever, but now I'm pretty sure that's where you meet Olaf. So no longer there. And then another very popular show that is gone, but was Lights, Motor, Action, the extreme stunt show. That was in the very back of the park, kind of past. You walked through the streets of America to get there. And this was taken down to create Galaxy's Edge, but it was there from 2005 to 2016. This is definitely a show that I miss a lot. It was a really long show. Like, I want to say it was 25 to 30 minutes at least. But it replaced the residential street of the Backlot Tour, where they had like a lot of the fake outsides of the houses for like Golden Girls and different shows. But it had 40 different vehicles.
I don't remember that at all.
Oh, where the Golden Girls house was?
Yeah, all I remember is the Lights, Motors, Action.
Yeah, so the Golden Girls part of the Backlot Tour that they used for like actual filming was initially part of that really long Backlot Tour that they had when the park first opened, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, this replaced that. So like that was all there until 2005 when this, or well, probably a little before that when they were constructing stuff. But then this opened, and then this was there for a long time until Star Wars. But there were over 40 different vehicles in the show, and then they also had this like maintenance garage where they house vehicles. But there was a hero car, which was red, and then all these like bad cars, which were black, so that guests could kind of know which was good, which was bad. But they did really cool stunts, explosions. They used this to promote Herbie the Love Bug. Did they also use this to promote Cars? Like, was Lightning McQueen, you know how Herbie used to come out and like do a little silly thing in the middle while they were changing over the set? Did they do that with Cars too, or am I making that up?
I don't think so. I don't ever remember seeing that.
Okay, maybe not. But it was a really, really cool show, and it had a huge huge seating stadium area, but it was almost always full. Like, I remember sometimes you'd get there at the end and you'd be sitting down really low and it'd be kind of hard to see, or they'd even make you like stand, which was interesting. But yeah, it was a really, really good show. And that's one that I miss a lot. And they had it in France as well. I don't think it's still there in France. But it was, yeah, they had like a lot of like Fast and Furious type stunts in the show.
I know that Universal has something really similar.
For Fast and Furious, or just like...
No, it's full. I know that I think they have it all the time. I think it's in Hollywood. But they did a lot of promotion for that Ryan Gosling movie.
Oh,
the
okay.
Fall Guy.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so... And it looked like, when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is like really, really similar to Lights, Motors, Action.
Okay, cool. And then a couple of like seasonal-ish things that did not last long. Maybe but these are seasonal, so I'm still trying to figure out what was shorter than that other show. But Unleash the Villains was an event on Friday the 13th in 2013. And it was this stage show during the Villains Unleashed event that they hosted. I don't know if it was during, I think so. But basically it was Hades from Hercules and Meg. And there's all these different villains that come and do songs on the show, or songs on the stage. And then afterwards they had this fireworks show called Villainy in the Sky. And that was all, like post-Phantasmic, so that it didn't, interrupt that. But, it was only just like this one-time thing, I think.
Interesting.
Which is very weird. And then there was something called...
no recollection of that at all.
Me either. And there was something called Oogie Boogie's Freaky Fun House, which was a live show that was at the Beauty and the Beast stage. And that's where Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas kind of did this stage show that celebrated all the Disney villains. But the show received mixed reactions from guests, and some people was like, oh yeah, it's really different, people that love Nightmare Before Christmas. And then others were like, I don't know, this was a little too like inappropriate for a Disney park. So they also put the kibosh to that. So it was like very short-lived. And they haven't brought any of that back. And then the Sorcerer's Hat, which we talked a little bit about last week in our Old vs. New, that was constructed as part of the 100 Years of Magic celebration, was there from 2001 to 2015 and replaced that Earful Tower as the landmark. The Earful Tower was there from 1989 at park opening until 2016, when it had to close for Toy Story Land, and really is where Slinky Dog Dash, or was where Slinky Dog Dash is. But during the 100 Years of Magic celebration, in the hat, there were like interactive kiosks for guests to learn more about Walt Disney's life and his career. But then once the celebration ended in 2003, the kiosks were removed, and then it was just used as like a store for merchandise. And I think this is why I don't like it very much, because it just seemed pointless. Like, there was not much there. It just seemed to be a big kind of eyesore. And if they would have done something cool with it, like maybe not made it a ride or anything, but like had something cool going on in there all the time, or like change it up a little bit. But I just feel like it sat there empty most of the time and had like lame merch. Like, it wasn't even good merch because it was mostly open. So it had to be stuff they could easily put away if there was inclement weather or whatever. So yeah.
It wasn't that open. I mean, like,
it had a roof.
Like, it wasn't. Yeah, it had a roof. Like, yeah. I mean, it was open on the sides, but it wasn't open up top.
Yeah, but if water starts blowing in there and getting all the merch wet, like, they couldn't have a lot.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
I remember it being a lot of like pins or like material like that, not like stuffed animals or shirts or whatever, because I think that could get ruined easier. Like bubble wands they probably had there, but yeah, it was interesting. And then one of the favorites that we have not talked about yet, the Studio Backlot Tour. So this ran obviously from opening day in 1989 all the way through 2014, and it was replaced because of the Toy Story Land expansion. So when the park originally opened, the studio tour was a lot larger. So it had the tram tour that we remember and a walking tour. Lasted about a total of 2 hours. And the tram section started with the attraction originally loading in the animation courtyard. So like way over there. So totally different than where it started. Yeah. It went all the way through the costuming and scenic departments first, then through Residential Street, which was backed by the Lights Motor Action. Like that's where that was. And some of the houses that were featured there, I talked about Golden Girls. There's also different movies like Ernest Saves Christmas. Then the tram passed through Catastrophe Canyon, which was there until it closed. Would have to go up New York Street and limited guest traffic walking. So it was a big problem because there were all these people that were walking and getting in the way of the trams. So that's when they decided they had to kind of go ahead and redo the way that it came through the park. But basically then after you unloaded on New York Street or near New York Street, you would walk the part of the water tour where there was a water effects tank demonstration. There was also this special effects demonstration involving blue screens, a giant bee prop from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and then the sound editing studio. And the tour ended totally at the Walt Disney Theater, where there would be previews for upcoming films. So as the park became more popular, the tour was scaled back, and that started with the Walt Disney Theater converting into the stage show for Here Comes the Muppets and eventually Voyage of the Little Mermaid. So it would kind of start there in the animation courtyard and then end up there at the very end of the walking part. But it was basically about a 2-hour experience, and New York Street was then open to full guest traffic by the end of 1989. So by 1991, the tram and walking tours were split into 2 separately running attractions, which were 30 minutes each. The walking section eventually became Backstage Pass, which we talked about before. And then, let me see. Then after the walking section, you had obviously the tram section, but there was in 2008, the live cast member spiel that was done kind of when you started and you were getting in the line for Backlot Tour, and sometimes you'd get picked to be part of the show. That was replaced by like a pre-recorded spiel. But upon entering the queue area, you were put into 4 different lines underneath the canopy. There were props from movies like Pearl Harbor, Pirates, another movie, The Rock, and then Michael Bay was kind of talking, which I definitely remember this, like him telling guests about how they did special effects scenes in Pearl Harbor. Do you remember that little video that played while you were in line?
Yeah, I do remember that, yeah.
And then while guests are waiting, 4 volunteers are chosen to be a part of the first attraction. And that's what they kind of stopped doing towards the end. But using the volunteers from before, they got all geared up and it went through this demonstration called Harbor Attack. So one person was in the engine room, like in the ship, and got totally dumped on with 1,000 gallons of water coming into the room through this window with these 2 big dump trucks, basically. And then the other 3 volunteers are actually on the deck when the attack happens and get like pummeled over. But yeah, it was, I do remember this was one show that like we didn't ever have anyone in our family get picked for or like try to get picked for. And I remember when they took it away, I was like, no, now I'm never going to get all that water dumped on me. Like I really wanted to do that. Do you remember that like whole little scene in the beginning?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
And then when the demonstration finished, guests continued into the big prop warehouse and you kind of moved through your line to get onto the tram. But this had all kinds of props. So like a movie called Marvin's Room, the Santa Claus had props in there. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, The Chronicles of Narnia, George of the Jungle. And then there also were some extinct Disney attraction pieces or props like from World of Motion that we talked about before. And most of the props were like tagged with information about where it came from, what years it was used, etc. And then at the exit of the building, the tram tour begins. So once you get onto the tram, the driver would bring you through like with a pre-recorded narration that goes kind of past the Earful Tower, and then it would, which is like the closest you could get to that tower. Then afterwards, the tram drives through the costume and materials section, and you could see everybody working. Like there were still people in those buildings working on actual costumes. And then you would get towards the end, once Lights Motor Action was open, you would get to go through this big room full of tires that was used for that stunt show. Then it brought you to this outdoor area named the Boneyard. And the Boneyard were all these vehicles used in films. So one was the dip machine from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. There was also ships from the original Star Wars franchise, motorcycles from Indiana Jones. There was an escape pod from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, different cars from Love Bug. There was also Pirates of the Caribbean, some like bone cages from the second movie, and Walt Disney's private airplane was also there, which was like a big piece that they had there forever that I do remember being there, and I know we have video footage and pictures of. But after you leave that, then you enter this current movie set, which is Catastrophe Canyon. So basically they do this whole little thing like you're on this set and all this water dumps all over the place and you're shaking, and it's like a little, I don't know, 2 or 3 minute thing, but they use so much water in that that sometimes you would go through there and they'd have it like closed for certain sections of the day because they had used so much water. But after you exit the canyon, then you go back through the Boneyard. This is where you see the private plane, and you can see the Lights Motor Action Stunt Show Stadium and practice areas. And after you get off the tram, you go through this museum exhibit that was based on AFI's 50 Greatest Villains, and there's also a store at the end. So this was a very long ride, very similar to what I've heard from Universal Studios Hollywood. They have their big backstage tram tour I think it is like an hour and a half or 2 hours long, and you can't bring young kids on it. Like, it has almost like a height requirement, but not for height, really just for like age, because it's so long and you can't really get off or go back. Like, you have to stay on it the whole time. So it's supposed to be very similar to that. Did you remember this ride at all, or not really?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember the tram part. I don't remember the walkthrough part much. I'm really glad that it doesn't exist now, because losing 2 hours to a thing would be tough.
Well, by the time it was what we knew, it was like 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was like, I don't remember it ever being that long. I definitely remember,
it was only that long initially.
The only thing that I like truly remember is the Catastrophe Canyon bit with like the water and the explosion. Besides that, I don't really remember much.
Okay. And then last but not least, one of our very favorite shows that we have not talked about yet was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Play It. And this was where the first version of Toy Story Midway Mania, or Toy Story Mania, was. It was the show was there from 2001 to 2006, also shorter than I thought in my brain. But it was a replica, like an exact replica of the actual television show set. And the sessions of the game ran several times a day. Each was about 25 minutes long and seated about 247 park guests. And contestants had to compete for points, not money. But the contestant won a collector's pin for each point level that you pass. And then a prize table I'll talk about below that I kind of copy and pasted of like what you got based on points. So not every point that you got or question, you got a pin that you could, they gave you a lanyard to put it on. But then once you got farther along, you got more prizes. Every audience member had their own ABCD keypad to answer the questions as well, but there were 10 contestant seats that were not special in any way. Like, they had the ABCD keypad as well, but they did have a video display of camera work, like, so they would be put on camera during different parts of the show, and access to those seats were kind of chosen by magic moment coupons, or like cast members picking people, quizzing people in the queue. But to begin, they had this thing called the fastest finger question, and the 10 contestants in those front seats were not used for the question. They were the same questions that were being asked by the show, but an audience member, so not the people in those like front seats, but anyone, who got the answer correct in the shortest time. So who did it, press the button the fastest, got to go in the hot seat and be the player for that round. So the hot seat contestant had 15 seconds to answer the first 5 questions, so the 100 to 1,000 points, 30 seconds for the next 5 questions, the 2,000 to 3,200, 45 seconds for the next 4 questions, 64,000 to 500,000, and then 55 seconds for the final 1,000,000-point question. They also could answer, so each audience member could answer the question on your own keypad at the same time, and contestants would win points by pressing the button correctly. But then they would show like what the audience's answers were, so like you felt like you were part of the show. Usually only 2 full games were played, kind of depending on how long that person lasted in the hot seat. But the player with the highest score on that last game won, and, you know, whatever, they kind of ended it there. But they did have the 3 lifelines, so similar to the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show. They had a 50-50, they had Ask the Audience, or Phone a Complete Stranger, which was actually a cast member. But Ask the Audience was immediate, so they would say, all right, audience, who do you think it is? And everyone had their answers A, B, C, D, and then obviously whatever the most popular one was, they were like, okay, I'm going to say A. Phone a Complete Stranger was a cast member that was outside of the theater that sometimes they would answer, or sometimes they would find a guest to help. It says Disney cast members weren't permitted to be on the show. They could not be on the show. It had to be a part guest. But part guests would play as hot seat contestants, and they were required to sign a waiver after completing the game. So this declared like basically fair market value for all of the prizes. And the biggest thing was, if you got the $1 million question and you got it right, you got to go on a Disney cruise for your family for 4 people. That is crazy that they gave that away.
I did not know that.
Yes. So I know this because our dad was on this show, and he got to the question, like either the question right before or 2 questions before the final, $1 million question. And he did really well. And he sent me pictures the other day of his lanyard, all the pins. We also had a baseball cap. He had a shirt, all these different things. In the early days of this show, contestants would also get this copy of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire CD-ROM game, which I'm pretty sure we had from him being on this. But initially, the $1 million point prize was to go to New York City, be flown to New York City, and get to watch a live taping of the show, which is cool, but not as cool as a Disney cruise. So after the show wasn't being taped anymore, this show at Hollywood Studios still existed, so they changed it to Disney Cruise. But the reason that I remember that was Dad being like, oh my gosh, a free Disney Cruise, that's crazy. But also our friends, the Deal family, when we were growing up, her dad, I think, got to the $1 million question, or maybe the question right before it. And they were so close to winning the cruise. And it was like this whole big deal. Because her dad was like big into entering sweepstakes and stuff. But do you remember when Dad was on it?
Yeah, I absolutely remember Dad being on it. I remember the lanyard. I remember the hat. I remember having to like wait around after the show for him to come back out and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so his question that he failed, he and I were talking about this the other day, and all I remember was what are the twins' names from some popular sitcom, like Everybody Loves Raymond or something like that. And he called, that's what he used so he hadn't used his phone a friend or whatever until that point, and called, and the person that they picked to help also had no idea, which sometimes happened in the show, like that is legit. But yeah, they couldn't help him, and so he lost. But yeah, that was funny. And then his like fastest finger question, he said, was who was the most eligible bachelor according to a certain magazine in a certain year. And he said the answer was JFK Jr. And the reason he knew that is because he had seen that exact like title, like phrase, like most eligible bachelor of blah, blah, blah year at Publix, like in the magazine section at the checkout line. And he was like, oh my gosh, I just saw this. And he pressed it like so fast and got picked, which is crazy. Hilarious. Yeah, it was crazy. So that's how he came to be on the show. But basically, they would also have different themes. So like during Star Wars weekends, the first 2 games of the day were basically Star Wars films and universe, which is really fun. It's like if they did this now, doing a Marvel theme or doing, I don't know, that's like makes it even more fun. And then during ESPN the weekend, it would be like sports trivia, and sometimes the commentators would be featured during the show and stuff. Or like be the phone a complete stranger people that you could talk to. So yeah, it was a really cool show. I really liked this one. It felt like something that, you know, because it looked very much like the real set, like you were really on the show and you got to participate. So that's something that I miss a lot. Obviously, Toy Story Mania and Toy Story Land is super cool, but this was a really cool one back in the day. So that wraps up all the attractions and shows of the past from Hollywood Studios. A couple of past events. We briefly touched another episode on Osborne Family Spectacle of Lights, which ran from November to January and featured over 5 million Christmas lights. That ended in 2015. We did talk about this in our Nighttime Spectacular episode. And then Star Wars Weekend was another thing that was very popular. We went to Star Wars Weekend quite a few times, but it ran Fridays through Sundays in June. And they had like different Star Wars actors that appeared each weekend. They would do photos and autographs, but they stopped that in 2015. I'm kind of surprised they haven't brought this back. Like, do you think it's just because every weekend is Star Wars Weekend now with Galaxy's Edge, or like why haven't they done this kind of a thing again?
I would imagine it's because they want people to always want to come to Star Wars and not to wait to come to specific weekends.
Okay.
You know? Like, but back then that was like all you could really get Star Wars wise, and now they have like characters are always walking around Galaxy's Edge.
True.
And it's like Galaxy's Edge is meant to be like this immersive, like canon experience, which is so stupid, but that's another video. So I think that would also take away, like, if all those characters were not there, then they couldn't really say that it's canon anymore. And then, like, they're losing the canonness of it because of characters that they do have appear now. It's just, yeah. But I remember Star Wars weekends like very fondly back when I cared a lot more about Star Wars. And like
you're a big Star Wars fan.
Yeah, when I from like age 6 to 10, and
yeah.
I mean like the parades were super cool. I always thought the costumes were done really well, and they had like every character. It wasn't just like these specific ones or like just the sequel people. Like it was like every character, which was really cool.
Right. That is really cool that they did that. And then they also had ESPN the weekend, which was always in the late winter, and they had commentators from different Disney-owned channels and sports celebrities. That started in 2004 and ended in 2011. I don't remember that as well, which surprises me because my husband is a huge sports person, and so I don't remember that being like such a big thing. But yeah, so that is a wrap up of our Hollywood Studios Parks of the Past episode. Out of all those things we talked about, which is so many, what show do you miss most that is no longer there, and any attraction that you miss the most?
I mean, the show is definitely the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire for me. It was very, very good and very fun, and I kind of wish that I could go back to that like with my adult brain.
Yes.
Now that I like know things, I think I would have a blast on that. Now I love a good trivia, and like you said, like theming it to different things would be super cool. I think there's just a lot of opportunity for them to do something, even if it's not Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but some kind of like high stakes trivia like that in the parks would be cool. But I wonder if there's a way that people now, with the way the internet is, like if people could access all the questions that could be asked and stuff. And
that's true. I didn't think about that. Like Googleable. I mean, you had to answer so fast, but I mean, there probably is like some AI thing or something.
Well, yeah. I mean, and people like just being able to study ahead of time. Like if you're giving away something as big as a cruise, like the legitimacy can't really come into question, and so I think that probably phased out alongside the growth of the internet. So, Definitely Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. For a ride, I mean, nothing's gone besides the Great Movie Ride, right?
No, Backlot Tour. There are a few things.
Right. I mean, I think I would enjoy the Backlot Tour a lot more now as an adult. I definitely, it was a bit of a slog when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I would probably say Great Movie Ride. Like, if I could have Great Movie Ride and Minnie and Mickey's, that would be ideal. I think that Mickey should have his own attraction.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, probably Great Movie Ride.
Yeah, I think as much as I love Doug Live, I think I would also say Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and then I would definitely say Great Movie Ride as my ride. I love it. I agree. I do think Mickey and Minnie's is great, and we could definitely still have it somewhere as some form of an attraction. But yeah, I would say Great Movie Ride. And then for old versus new, have you seen the Frozen Ever After show? Because we're going to do Doug Live versus Frozen Ever After. And what are your thoughts?
I have, I've seen both. Doug Live, I don't remember anything other than the Quail Man part.
Okay.
So I would have to rewatch it, but it doesn't really matter because the new Frozen show is trash. So
yeah. Okay, I feel like we're going to agree on this one.
It's so bad.
So many people love it, which blows my mind.
It's if you haven't seen it before, I would encourage you to go see it so you can see what we're talking about. It is shockingly not Frozen and not Disney. Wasn't it like wildly inappropriate?
Yes. So we went, this was the hard thing because you go to Hollywood Studios, and if you're a classic Hollywood Studios kid like we are, and you've seen Hunchback, you've seen Beauty and the Beast, even Indiana Jones, they are so immersive. They're very similar to the movies. There's actors and actresses portraying these people on stage, live singing the entire time, right? Like, that's what I was expecting. So I was like, oh my gosh, a Frozen show. My daughter was very young at the time that we first saw it. I think she was 2. And I was like, this is great. She loves Frozen. It's going to be just like, I was picturing just like Beauty and the Beast, but Frozen, where they basically perform the most popular songs of the movie live. And like, you know, maybe they'll have some little hokey jokes in between or something. That's what I was expecting. So went in there with that concept. You go in, you sit down, and there's these 2 hosts, usually a male and female host. And they basically make like very inappropriate adult jokes, in my opinion. Some people think they're hilarious. I love a good adult joke. I love a good adult comedy. Not with my 2-year-old sitting there or my nieces who are, you know, older asking, what does that mean? Or like repeating the joke later that's like so inappropriate and like not at all Disney and not in Frozen. Like that's not how Frozen was. So I was like, why did they feel the need to do this? And I think it was to make the adults laugh and like have the adults feel like they're included, but it was so ridiculous to the point where then we're like, okay, we can get over these 2 people being obnoxious on the stage. So we are sitting there and we're like, whatever, we're just all looking at each other like, what is this? And they were like, all right, now time to sing our first song. And they go to sing like Love is an Open Door or something, or I don't even remember, or for the first time in forever. And it's just a video of the movie on the screen with the words so you can sing along. No Anna, no Hans out on the stage singing. And then the characters would come out dressed up like Anna or Hans and talk a little bit. And then they'd go back and they'd play another video of the movie singing. I think the only one was at the very end. I think Elsa came out, and I don't know that she sang. I think she lip synced to Let It Go, and they had fake snow, like bubbles, basically fall from the sky, or like Snope fall from the sky. But we left that, and I was like, what did we just watch? And like, why would Disney not do it to like a Disney standard? I hated it. So if you love this show, please explain to me. Am I just being too much of a prude? Like, what do you love about it?
I completely agree in that, like, I'm 100% not a prude. Probably the furthest thing from. Like, I can 100%, like, I can get down with adult jokes. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and in Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, sometimes they do a little bit like kids are like, what? And adults are like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. But this was like next level.
yeah, it's because it's not like hidden. It's like it's like blatant.
Yeah.
And it's also like you said, like Frozen is such a huge IP that like why would you waste it with that?
Yeah, and the songs are so good, and they could have made it like redone it with Frozen 2 to like the Frozen. Maybe they have. I literally have never been back because it was so awful. And I thought about trying it again with my daughter now that she's older to see if it's better, but I can't justify spending 30 minutes, probably 40 between waiting in line for the show to start and watching the show to be so disappointed again. There's too much else at the park that's incredible.
Yeah.
But our mom which we'll have to talk with her about when she comes on the show as a guest, but she literally wrote Disney a nasty email being like, this was the worst. Like, I have never been so disappointed. And she likes to do things like that, but I don't know that she's ever done that for like a show or an attraction at Disney. It's always been like a bad dining experience or a bad experience that she's done it in the past. But this was like, she was like, this needs to be removed. And I don't remember if they wrote anything back or she got any kind of generic email back, but I was like, I agree with you. I'm so glad you're telling them, but they clearly didn't listen because it's still there. And I'm pretty sure it's still like the same inappropriate joke people in the beginning. Maybe they've toned it down. I don't know.
No, I mean,
I don't know.
I think that she got a response back, but it definitely wasn't like they're not going to change it.
We need to start a change.org petition to continue our theme from last week. Yeah, it's horrible. They basically just need to change it to be live actors and actresses like
that's more
singing.
Expensive.
I know, but they're already paying them to be out there to walk around.
Yeah, but those people probably can't sing, so they're probably not paid much.
True. Yeah. I don't know. That's one thing is like Disney's getting a little too cheap with like the performance aspect of things. Like, but in Indiana Jones, I'm so glad because there was rumors that they were going to get rid of that, and there still are rumors that maybe that will go one day. That's one of my favorite shows that we'll talk about when we talk about our present episode for the parks. But there's so many actors in that they can't figure it out for Frozen, one of their biggest IPs. That's wild to me, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would definitely choose Doug Live. Also, I just have so many fond memories of Doug Live. Our dad will not be surprised when he listens to this that that's what we chose. But it was really cute. I obviously think, Doug is a little outdated, and I don't know that it would do well now. But I would rather go watch Doug Live any day than rewatch that Frozen show. But I do think my most missed show is definitely... Yeah, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? That one is just... I wish they could put that there, man. It was so good.
It was good.
So good. Okay, well, let's do our trivia real quick. I almost just ended, and I remembered we haven't done trivia. You probably will know the answer. I don't know the answer to this. What do locals say that they are collecting inside of Savvy's workshop? I'm guessing this is a Star Wars thing. Do you know who that is?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who it is, but I know the workshop.
Okay. Are they collecting scrap metal, gold, crystals, or coins? I'm going to say coins.
Crystals?
Okay, let's see.
Like, are they talking about
scrap metal.
Kyber crystals? Oh.
Scrap metal. I don't know. I'm not a big Star Wars person. Regan is.
No, I'm not.
I have an appreciation for the fandom. Well, not big. You like it, but you're not
I don't like Star Wars.
Like you were.
I'm aggressively anti-Star Wars.
Oh, really? Since when? You watched the whole Disney Plus show and all that?
No, I don't.
Blah. You don't?
No.
Oh.
I don't.
I thought you
I don't have time to speak my piece, but Star Wars is awful.
Okay, we're not going to get into that today. We're also going to lose so many followers. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, thanks for listening. We are going to wrap up our Parks of the Past series on the next episode with the last one, Animal Kingdom. Some people did vote for it, actually, in the last poll, so I didn't feel as bad for poor Animal Kingdom as I did the poll before. But yeah, and then pretty soon, we're like 2 weeks from today, away from our run that we're recording this. So we're definitely going to do a little update in our Animal Kingdom episode because there's not as much to talk about in that one as there are in other parks.
Well,
but just giving y'all...
Our next post will be after we've run already.
After this one, yeah, the Animal Kingdom episode will drop the day after we run.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Well, 2 days after, yeah. Oh my gosh, these people are mowing the lawn outside my apartment, and it's so loud, so I'm sorry if you can hear it.
Okay, well, that's the last of our episode. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe. Oh, do you want to do your Club 33?
I can't.
No Club 33 today.
It's literally,
we'll talk literally to you guys
like
next. I hear it.
Yeah, it's picking it up. They're like right
loud.
outside the window.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, you guys have a good week, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right,
Bye.
See you next week.